Hello. I think it's worth listening to an interview which was done on Sky last night by Kordorkovsky. He's the man who was in prison for 10 years, the ex-oligarch, who knew Putin well. And he makes it very clear that in the West, although we recognize that Putin probably is the enemy of the West and has set himself up as the enemy of the West, we have done him the sort of favor of thinking of him as a statesman, whereas in fact he is simply a thug. And the only thing he understands is that his threats are met by force and by the threat of force. I'm not entirely convinced that that is the only way forward, but I'm absolutely in agreement that his analysis of Mr. Putin is right. That's an analysis I would give for quite a lot of people that I've had dealings with while I've been in Russia. People from Mr. Putin's own circle. And certainly I wouldn't trust them an inch. Though I have hoped, I have always hoped. As for the oligarchs, Putin depends not only on his cronies in the Secret Service, now the FSB, but the KGB. This was, as Kordorkovsky points out, basically a mafia organization that thought the rules didn't apply to it. And the FSB and elements of the FSB take the same approach, hence the poisoning, hence the threats, hence the predatory behavior following various individuals around the place. But Putin also depends on these pseudo-businessmen. Often these are people who actually are squirreling away Putin's own money, or money that comes from the higher echelons of the Putin inner circle, so that Putin can quite rightly say, oh, this isn't mine, as he did with Putin's palace, as he would do with his yacht. Now, are we right to expose this? In one sense, yes. In one sense, yes. In another sense, I think it's been foolish exposing it because it leaves Putin with no escape option. Where does he go? If he loses power, what is his future? And that must be preying on him, quite apart from the fact that he's clearly going mad. So we've not only got an exit strategy to think about, we've also got this business that hits so many dictators, like Marius in ancient Rome. Now, as for the businessmen, we should definitely be going after them, and we should not pull any punches. The amount of money that we in the West think that we may get out of these businessmen is nothing compared to the amount of money, as Kordorkovsky says, that we will have to pay now to ensure our security. Our security is expensive. And how will Putin's regime end? Here, Kordorkovsky is quite clear. He thinks there are three options. Somebody from his inner circle will get rid of him or replace him, that the army will step up and replace him, or it will have to wait until he dies. I don't see any alternative to that. I think he's quite right. But at the end of the interview, he makes a very interesting point, that he's been talking to people in Germany and asking them at what point did they recognize the heinous dictatorship of Hitler. And apparently they were saying, oh, it probably wasn't until about 1968, particularly in East Germany, that people recognize this. It takes a generation. And he rather ominously points out that it may take at least a generation before people realize what a thug, what a liability Mr. Putin has been. Now, do we have that generation? And I think the only optimistic approach is that Mr. Putin is replaced as soon as possible by somebody who is not as bad. So somebody from his inner circle, that's going to be very difficult. His inner circle is as corrupt as he is, and he's made sure of that. And one of the reasons, probably, that we're in this war with Ukraine is that Putin has relied on an even tinier inner circle because he's clearly terrified of COVID. Now, can we use that? Yes, we can. Putin is terrified of dying. It's as simple as that. Putin has made sure. It may not even be that he's a coward. It may not even be that. It may be that he recognizes that there is no natural succession. It may simply be a warped form of patriotism. But it's there nevertheless. Putin is frightened of his own death.